My name's Mike. My question is on nutrition, and wondered if you bought into Hammer's limited calorie liquid type nutrition during your training or during a race or ride and stuff. If you agreed with that type of program, or if you've got some other suggestions.
Is it limited calories in order to make your body adapt to using the calories, or is it?
No, I think their theory was that if you take over too many, I mean, you just can't assimilate them anyway. Your body has no way to take them in. So that was their kind of theory, as I understand it.
Right, and the physiology seems to indicate that about you can absorb and utilize about 1 gram of carbohydrate per minute. So then the theory was, well, then there's certainly no reason to take in more than 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Some other research more recently showed that when you mix sugars, so it's not all glucose or it's not all fructose, it's a mixture, then you can sometimes up the amount that you can absorb per hour. So you can get it to, I think it was 1.4 grams per minute. I think that was Jukendroop's research. At the end of the day, it's a matter of what you can actually tolerate. There's no way, especially riding at a higher intensity, that you're going to replenish the energy, all of the energy that you actually expend. I mean, you can expend 800 calories to 1,000 calories an hour on a hard ride, and there's no way that during a ride that you're going to eat that much. If you do, you're more likely going to throw up. So, and you shouldn't necessarily try. But at the same time, it's the general guidelines that we've been following for a lot of years, with the 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour, about 500 to 700 milligrams of sodium per liter of fluid that you're taking in. Those are a good point for a lot of people, and then you have to start adjusting based on how it's impacting you. If you're following the guidelines and bulking all the time, then yeah, it's time to increase the amount of nutrition that you're taking in. If you're, on the other hand, taking in the recommended amounts, and you just feel bloated and you're burping up sports drink and all of that kind of stuff, then yeah, it's time to ratchet things down and see where that happy medium is.
Do you have any problem with solid foods, or?
They're really, I mean, there's certainly no problem with solid foods. And one of the things that I especially recommend for people who are doing ultra endurance events or even just centuries is a variety of foods: solids, gels, chomps, fluids. The variety itself can be more important than what's in the variety. One of the things that we recognized, we had 70 plus athletes at the Leadville 100 last year. We've got athletes doing 100-mile runs and things along those lines, and Ironman. If you drill into a person's head that they have this one food that they need, and it's not available, or 7 hours into an event, just the 4-year-old in them comes out and they've decided they're done, they're not going to eat that anymore, then they don't finish. The variety is, 5 hours into a ride or 3 hours into a ride, you may decide that you really need something that tastes like chocolate, or you really need something crunchy, or something salty. And if your body, if you're not accustomed to eating those things, or you don't have them with you, or you're too constrained on what is perfect nutrition and it can only be these things, that becomes more of a problem for athletes than what exactly is often in that piece of nutrition that they're getting. That variety, I actually have a personal story about it. I had a bar in my back pocket 14 miles from the finish of the Leadville 100 the second year I did it. First year I did it. And it's this long road climb. And when you get to the top of the climb, you're pretty much done with all of the challenging stuff. It's 11 miles to the finish, mostly downhill. I knew I was bonking. I knew I could feel it. I was in trouble. My wife was at the top of the climb, and I had a bar in my back pocket, but it was chocolate, and I did not want chocolate. And even though I had written a book about sports nutrition, I had coached 8 years, all of those things went out the window, and I didn't eat it. And I cracked halfway up that corner. And, was just crawling by the time I got up there. And you get to the finish line, I crammed a whole bunch of food down my throat and finished the race and everything else. And I sat and thought about it later that night, like, what was I, stupid? The bar was, I had the fuel with me, but that's what happens to athletes when you put them in actual operations. And so we try with athletes, especially when they're going into larger, longer events, to throw everything that we can at them in terms of nutrition, teach them a good strategy to follow, and then also teach them how to get themselves out of trouble when they get off track. Because everybody gets off track during really long events. It's just the nature of it.